Number 1. Scaphism. Death by the boats. If you're claustrophobic, this one's definitely going to chill your bones. It was an ancient Persian punishment designed not just to suffocate you, but to keep you alive long enough to witness the slow destruction of your own body. It began by trapping the victim between two hollowed-out boats, one placed beneath, one on top, leaving only the head, arms, and legs exposed. Once locked in, the person couldn't move an inch. The executioners would then smear their body with a mixture of milk and honey, covering every visible patch of skin, and force-feed them the same mixture. The excessive feeding would cause vomiting and diarrhea, turning the small space between the boats into a foul, sticky mess. Soon, insects, flies, beetles, worms were drawn to the scent of decay and sugar. They'd crawl into the open sore's mouth and nostrils, feeding on the flesh while the victim screamed and begged for mercy. The goal wasn't just death, it was prolonged, conscious torment. Victims could survive for days, some reports even mention a week, before dying from dehydration, infection, or being quite literally eaten alive. It's remembered as one of the most disgusting, drawn-out punishments ever recorded in history. Number 2. Lingqi, death by 1,000 cuts. A single paper cut can sting for minutes, but imagine your entire body being sliced open again and again, thousands of times. Lingqi, known as death by 1,000 cuts, was an ancient Chinese punishment reserved for crimes like treason or the murder of one's master. It wasn't meant to just kill. It was meant to erase a person's honor, to make sure even death couldn't cleanse their crime. The condemned would be tied tightly to a wooden post in a public square. Then the executioner began his gruesome work, cutting the flesh slowly, deliberately, and with practiced precision. Arms first, then the legs, then pieces from the chest and shoulders, small controlled slices to keep the victim alive for as long as possible. Imagine the horror of feeling every cut while the crowd watched in silence, some out of duty, others out of morbid curiosity. If the executioner was merciful, or the crime lesser, the first cut might be to the throat, granting instant death before continuing the ritual dismemberment. But most victims weren't so lucky. In Chinese culture, dying with an incomplete body was believed to block the soul's peace after death. So Lingqi didn't just destroy the body, it condemned the soul, a punishment so cruel, it was officially banned in the early 1900s, but the stories remain chilling to this day. Number 3. Sawn in half. This next one feels like something out of a nightmare, but it actually happened to a man named Alcaide Melek in 1705. Melek led a rebellion and even beheaded a cousin of the Sultan's wife. The Sultan, furious, summoned his chief carpenter and asked, "Can your saws cut a man in two?" The carpenter replied, "They can, my lord." The punishment was to be carried out lengthwise, from head to toe, so that death would come slowly. Melek was paraded through the streets on a mule, his body bound tightly and brought to a crowded square. Around 4,000 of his relatives and clan members gathered, forced to watch. His clothes were torn off. He was laid on a board, his hands and legs strapped down. The saw bit into him from between the legs, moving upward, inch by inch. The screams that followed were described as unbearable. Some witnesses claimed Melek stayed conscious for a horrifyingly long time, begging for water as the saw cut through him. His friends cried out, begging the executioners to end it quickly, but mercy wasn't part of the sentence. Blood splattered the wooden platform, and chunks of flesh stuck to the teeth of the saw. By the end, even the executioners were said to be trembling. That day became one of the darkest examples of slow death ever recorded. Number 4. The breaking wheel. If there's one punishment that defined medieval Europe, it was this one, the breaking wheel. The wheel itself looked like a giant wagon wheel, laid flat on the ground or raised upright on a pole. The condemned was tied to it with ropes, arms and legs stretched out unnaturally. Once bound, a heavy iron bar was brought down on the limbs, smashing bones one by one. The sound of cracking echoed through the crowd, first the legs, then the arms, until nothing could move anymore. But it didn't end there. The broken body was then woven between the wheel's spokes, and the entire structure was sometimes hoisted up, left to spin in the air like a grotesque windmill. If that wasn't enough, the wheel might be rolled over spikes, fire, or rocks, ensuring every turn multiplied the agony. The face was left uncovered, so the victim could see what was happening to them. Some accounts mention that it could take hours or even days to die. And religiously, some believed that dying on the wheel denied the soul a proper resurrection. making it not just a physical but a spiritual punishment. It was brutal, public, and symbolic, the kind of spectacle that reminded everyone what disobedience cost in the medieval world. Number 5. The Iron Maiden. You've seen it in horror movies, but yes, it was very real. The Iron Maiden is one of the most recognizable torture devices of all time. It stood upright like a human-shaped coffin made of solid metal. The inside was lined with long, razor-sharp spikes, placed precisely to pierce organs just deep enough to cause agony, but not instant death. Once the victim was pushed inside, the doors shut with a heavy clang, and the spikes sank into flesh. Blood would run down the iron grooves as the victim's muffled screams echoed from within. They could take hours to die, slowly bleeding out, body trembling in the dark, unable to move or see. Executioners sometimes treated it as a game, choosing whether to strike vital organs right away or make the suffering last. Some even adjusted the spikes to hit different parts, depending on the crime. One twisted mercy, spikes were often placed where the eyes would be, so the victim was blinded instantly, never seeing the horror their body endured. Even by medieval standards, this punishment was considered inhumane. It became a symbol of cruelty, and eventually of how far humans could go in the name of justice. Number 6. The Heretic's Fork. Finally, we have the Heretic's Fork, a device that wasn't even meant to kill, but often did. Used during the Spanish Inquisition, it was a small metal instrument shaped like a double-ended fork, with 2 sharp prongs on each side. It was strapped between the chin and the chest using a leather belt. Once locked in place, the victim couldn't speak, swallow, or even lower their head. Any attempt to do so would drive the metal points deeper into the flesh. They were tied tightly, hands, feet, body, forced to stay perfectly still. Imagine the fear of being unable to rest, the sweat dripping down your neck, knowing even a small twitch could pierce your throat. That was the point. It was psychological torture, sleep deprivation, fear, and pain all at once. Victims were often left like this for hours, sometimes days, until exhaustion or blood loss took them. Some survived, but most didn't, and those who did were never the same again. When you hear stories like these, it's hard to believe that humans ever thought such punishments were justice. But they were real, crafted by people who believed pain purified the soul or maintained order. These tortures remind us how far civilization has come, and how dark it once was.